Okay, it is 1:30 p.m. on Tuesday, September 5th, 2023, and this is the Chartered Clubs Committee meeting, first one for fiscal year 2023-2024, and welcome everybody for our new committee this year. We've established a quorum. We've got 100% attendance from everybody here. And the first item of business is to approve our meeting minutes from our previous meeting from the last meeting of the last fiscal year from June 6, 2023. Are there any changes, additions, or deletions from those minutes? Okay, seeing none, they will be accepted as written. We're going to jump right to agenda item 3.01, which is microphone usage. We do this every year because we have new people who attend and come onto the committee. So the way the microphones work is you press the word that says push, you press it once, let go. When the green light comes on, you speak into it. You stay about 4 or 5 inches away. And if you do not lean into it and they can't hear you in the back, there'll be an angry light that will flash at us and let us know so that the people at home can hear what's going on. So you'll have a chance to test that in a minute when we get to the next item, which is the next. Any questions on this? Microphone usage. Okay, good. Next item of business is committee introductions, and I'm going to ask each committee member to introduce him or herself to the rest of the committee and the audience here. Connie?
Hi, I am Connie Kopf. I have pretty much lived all over the U.S., but my last favorite spot for about 40 years was San Diego. So I left San Diego and came here 6 years ago. My background was in special education and counseling, and then I ended up the last years of my career in healthcare, kind of connected, but not totally. And last year, I was on this committee last year and served on the Tournaments, Leagues, and Special Events Committee, and I'm looking forward to another year doing this.
Good afternoon. My name is Paul Voorhees. New to the committee here. I've lived in Sun City West one way or another for the last dozen years, and originally from the Northwest, but I've worked all over the country. Spent 30 years as a financial manager, and been retired for about 20, so I don't remember too much about what I did that long ago. But enjoy travel, and certainly Sun City West. I think this is the greatest place to ever. There's so much to do and so forth. And glad to be here. Looking forward to finding out more about Chartered Clubs Committee and what it does. And glad to be here.
My name is Vicki Erla. I retired from 40 years of teaching high school in New Jersey in 2014, and we quickly sold the house and moved out here full-time to the house we bought in 2012. During my years in Sun City West, I have been president of the yoga club, and then I took a demotion and went to vice president. And last year was my first year on Chartered Clubs, and last year I was also the chair of the Tournament Leagues and Special Events Working Group. And looking forward to another great year and like to welcome our new members.
My name is Jamie Mann. I've been in Sun City West for about 1.5 years. I'm an Arizona native. I'm also serving on the Theater West board and just looking forward to getting more involved and new to the committee.
I'm Jack Leary. I am the chair of the Chartered Clubs Committee, and I'm also a member of the governing board. This is my second year chairing this committee. I felt we had a good year last year and look forward to doing more of the same. I've been here in Sun City West for about 6 years, and having retired as a strategy consultant based in the Chicago area.
Hi, my name is Judy Thompson, and I've been in Sun City West for 5 years. I moved here from Minnesota. Haven't looked back at those Minnesota winters since. This is actually my 4th year on the committee, and the reason I re-upped for it is we did such good work last year and started some projects that I would love to see to fruition. My background is nurse management, and welcome new members.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maria DeMeo. I moved to Sun City West about 5 years ago, and almost 2 years ago retired from corporate life, and so now spending more time giving back and my time and helping people in the community. So I do a lot of things besides volunteer for committees. For example, I participate in food banks, and I do things with other financial institutes to provide help. I'm a posse member, and last year I was on the properties committee, and this year I wanted to give a tryout to the chartered clubs. So I'm a new member. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Carol Card. I originally come from the state of Maine, where the weather this summer was absolutely perfect. And I appreciate not having been here for some of these high temperatures. I've been on this committee. This is my 3rd year, and I've been a resident for 7 years. I retired several years ago as a manager of an operating room and also a member of the heart transplant team, and that was in Tucson. That's it.
Hi, Nick Turner. This is my 2nd year on the committee, or it will be soon. I joined partway through last year when there was some after a resignation, I believe. I've been in Sun City West for 5 years. I'm a retired software product manager in warehouse management, order management, and commerce. And I'm looking forward to continuing what we started last year.
And I'm Kathy Estes. I've been in Sun City West for about 5 years, moved here from Boise, Idaho. I went through the Torch Committee my very first year. I've been on the Chartered Clubs Committee. This is my 3rd year, and I served last year on the Club Track Subcommittee and on the Space Utilization Working Group. I think we accomplished quite a bit, and looking forward to this year, and welcome to all you new folks. Look forward to working with you.
Great, thank you all. Appreciate that. I think we have a good group of people, a lot of experience, a lot of relatively new people in the community here, so that's good. I was just thinking, looking, year and a half to 12 years, 14 years, Vicki, well, and Paul, 12. So everybody seems to be, relatively new. So that's good. We have a broad range of experience here. We're going to go to agenda item 3.03, the Rec Center Committee's roster. Yeah, Karen? Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. We have our recreation manager, who is our staff advisor. So, Casey, please introduce yourself. My apologies.
Oh, that's okay. My name is Casey Huda. I'm Rec Center Manager, like Jack said. I've actually been working for the Rec Centers of Sun City West now for 8 years. I've been in this position for 2. And I have enjoyed working, building relationships, and making the best that we can out of all of you clubs. So, thank you.
Thank you, Casey. Okay, now I will move on to the handout. So everybody here up on front has a handout. That is the list of committee members as they stand as of right now. This is a list for your use only. It's not to be distributed, but it's for your reference so that you have that, so you know who your peers are on the other committees. Any questions on that? Okay, using BoardDocs and accessing YouTube. Karen, are you going to do that, or am I going to do that? I'm going to do that, okay. So there's a handout in your packet called the cheat sheet on what to do with board docs. Who here has not used board docs? Everybody's used board docs. Does anybody have any questions? I'll save some time by not having to go over this. Okay, great. That was easy. I'm just talking to them. Sure, you can use board docs. Yes. It's attached to the agenda. The handout is attached to the agenda. So it's online. It's on BoardDocs. That sounds like a conundrum. Okay, accessing YouTube. Has everybody accessed our YouTube page? Anybody has not done it? Anybody out there not done it? Okay, you go to YouTube and you can search for Sun City West, and you should be able to find all of the videos that have been recorded. All of the meetings that are in this room are recorded via YouTube and are posted following the meetings. And if you cannot make a meeting in person, you can view the meetings online as well.
Jack, can I just add something if you don't mind?
Sure.
I noticed there are a lot of people in the audience that don't seem to know a lot about BoardDocs. So what I will tell you is if you can go to the suncitywest.com website and click on a link called Governing Board, at the bottom of that page under all the board pictures, you'll see BoardDocs. There's a button there. Just click that. That'll take you right to it, and you can always look at all the agendas and meetings that are going to happen on BoardDocs. And as was said, I think they're little file folders on the agenda items. You open those up and print those if you want to bring those to the meeting with you. I provide them only to the committee members. Okay, so, and if any of you have questions, feel free to come up to me after the meeting if you're sort of totally confused by this, and I'll go through and give you my contact info, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. All of these meetings follow Arizona state law for open meetings. So that means that the agendas and any attachments or handouts for the committees or for the board will be available online at least 48 hours in advance. So all of that's there, and as Karen said, you can access that, you can view the attachments, you can print them, whatever you need to do. So I encourage you to do that before you come to these meetings. So are any other questions? Okay, there's a, in your packet, bear with me here a minute, there is a Oh, okay, thank you. Actually, I was looking for the roles and responsibilities document. Okay, so in the handbook, there is a description of what the Chartered Clubs Committee does. All of the committees are described in there, but the one that we want to talk about is the Chartered Clubs Committee. I have, all of you having read it, do you have any questions about that? I mean, we've used the same one every year. At least this is the second year for me anyway. Okay, so we're good with that. Okay, so that's the admin and the housekeeping part of our agenda. Casey, I'm going to turn it over to you for your Chartered Clubs update.
All right. It's been a pretty busy summer. You'll see once I get through this, you'll see what we've done over the course of the last couple months. We do have 92 clubs. We started off the year at 94. So the June committee meeting, Shuffleboard had just dissolved, and then porcelain painters just dissolved as well. So I just wanted to keep you posted on that. Porcelain painters room will be a classroom for glass fusion and copper enameling for right now. That's an operational decision that was made. Beaters have moved to Kuntz in the Kiva room, so they're sharing a room with 2 other craft clubs. And Bunko and Wednesday Night Bridge at this point are swapping locations. Bridge has 2 clubs within itself, so it's only affecting Wednesday night. Bunko was busting at the seams. I don't know if any of you paid attention. Maybe 2 years ago, the president then came up to the mic and expressed her concerns, and it took about 2 years for us to get this done. So moving forward, it's been a long time coming. We have about less than 5 charter clubs to work with the bylaws. So thank you so much for those of you that worked with us. Some of it seemed a little confusing, but we got through it. We're almost done. And then if you don't know this already, or if she's already come around, Dory Miller is just going around kind of checking with all the clubs to see how you're doing, if you have any questions. Sometimes it's a little, I know the liaisons do stuff, but sometimes the rec centers ask questions that you guys may not even know to ask. We also hired a productions coordinator at Stardust Theater. It's Robert Boubon. He is with us today. He's helping with the preventative maintenance for the equipment within that facility because we have found since COVID, I'm sorry I'm saying that word, but since COVID, there's just been some missing areas. So we're just trying to get that facility back up and running above par. And then I want to just kind of thank a handful of clubs with the consolidating that I've asked many of them to do. Boomers and Women's Club work together. Thank you so much. Zymergy called us in asking for more space. We went down there, worked with them, came up with better solutions. So it's not about moving, it's about consolidating. Creative Stitchers and Silk Flowers have been very accommodating by opening up their doors to beaters. And then Computer West is also working on some areas. And then Bunko and Contract Bridge. The only other thing that's not listed on here, and I have it written down before I saw you, Debbie, just so you know, I just kind of want to give a shout out to Aquasizers. A year ago from today, they had 28 members, I believe. They came to me asking for help. I connected them with Water Fitness, and that wasn't the best fit, but Debbie took on a new role and has really increased their membership, and they're now at 106 members. So kudos to Debbie. She's actually been really good with us, pointing some areas out. So you'll see some changes over at Beardsley as well. You're welcome, thank you. And then Dawn Dodery wanted me to give a shout out to the clubs here because of the parking lot. So those of you that reside here, thank you so much for being so kind and patient during this process. So that's it.
Thank you, Casey. Any questions up here, from up here? Okay, with that, we'll go to new business, which is start with 5.01, which is called revised RR&Ps notice. This is a notice to let you know that there are meetings for the RR&Ps revision that will be taking place on the third Tuesday of every month. They are on BoardDocs. The meetings are listed, they're scheduled. The only topic at those meetings will be the revised RR&Ps. This committee has met over the summer in small groups and individually. We have revised the RR&Ps. Basically, they've been rewritten. So what the purpose of having this agenda item here today is to post the RR&Ps as they have been rewritten, or on version 9.1, and they are on BoardDocs. I encourage you to go to BoardDocs, download the RR&Ps, and do whatever you want to do to, look at them, ask questions, so that you can bring them to our next meeting, which will be on September 19th in this room at 1:30, and the RR&Ps will be the only topic. And we will continue that alternating meetings through the end of December. So our first meeting of the month will be a regular Chartered Clubs Committee meeting. The second meeting of the month will be to discuss the RR&Ps only. So yes, question.
I've seen one RR&P document that's massively marked up, and another one that says current RR&Ps, 29 pages. Are we working on the one with all the markups on it?
No, there's a version 9.1 is the one you should have. And it's the one on BoardDocs.
Okay, that's what I'm looking at, and that's what we'll be working on in the next 4 meetings?
No, the one that's on BoardDocs, you must have an old version. So what I would encourage you to do is refresh your cache. And it's also included in hard copy here.
Okay, so the one in the hard copy here is the one we'll be working off of?
Yes.
For RR&P meetings?
That's
Okay,
correct.
thank you.
That is correct. So any other questions? Okay. Thank you. We're going to have a facilities update, CO3 Chartered Club. I think this is what I was referring to, the other one. This is the policy that we've used for the last couple of years. It's in here somewhere. We have many pieces of paper up here. But there's a paragraph that's highlighted that describes what this Chartered Clubs Committee does. And it should have been in the policy, I think, that you all read. Any questions on that? Do we need to make any revisions to that? I'll take that as a no. Silence implies consent. Okay, thank you. Now we'll move on. Carl, you want to give us an update on capital projects, 23, 24 capital projects?
Good afternoon, everyone. How are you today? I'm Carl Wilhelm, our capital and projects project manager, and also currently our facilities operations manager. So it's been a very busy season since we've had committees last, May, June, and a lot of things have been accomplished between now and then. So this is the same report. In fact, all reports that I'll be giving today purposely are the same reports that'll be at every committee as we go through this month's committees, and we'll do the same each month. So the Properties Committee report that will be given next Thursday, capital projects update, maintenance yard, storage roof and gate closure has been completed, 6/16. The tennis tower room partition, glass door and frame was completed, 6/14. Social hall hardwood screen and seal was completed, 7/6. The table tennis hardwood floors were completed, 7/7. Racquetball hardwood floors, sand and seal, we stripped those all the way down to bare wood and recoated them, were finished on 7/12. The metal shop asphalt parking lot was redone last year. 12 months later, we do a seal coat on brand new asphalt. That was completed on 7/9. The swim and fitness pool deck at R.H. Johnson was completed on 8/11. Maintenance yard, property fence, and gates is a project in progress currently. The sports pavilion bowling lanes replacement is a project that's in progress and on schedule. We are projected to open next Monday. We also did the ball returns in that same location. And we replaced all of the bowler area's floors, flooring. So it used to have like a nice brown LVT flooring in there, but due to the transition change and new flooring to the lanes, it required us to change out the flooring in that area, including all of the foyers, entries to the sports pavilion. So you'll have nice new walk-off carpet and a new LVT area at the north end. The parking lot 3 asphalt mill and replacement project, as everybody is aware, And thank you for kindly parking in the library parking lot. Sorry for all the inconveniences to the community, but that project is on schedule, and we are currently soil stabilizing that project, and it should be done in 2 weeks. Over at Kuntz, we completed the asphalt seal and stripe on 8/18. Moving over to Palm Ridge, the Aquatic Center's entry stairs, loft, flooring replacement was completed on 6/27. The Summit Hall received its yearly screen and seal for the hardwoods, completed 7/26. I have a error on the next line item, Summit Hall window shades and blinds, it says completed. This was written before the outcome that they had an error in their fabrication, so I think September 27th, that project will be back on schedule to be completed. The pickleball facility windscreen replacement project was completed last week. Over at Stardust Pro Shop, we did a seal and stripe to that parking lot, completed on 7/30. Deer Valley's Pro Shop seal and stripe was completed on 8/5. This is also a brand new parking lot from last year and got its first seal coat. And then as we sit here today, Grandview's Pro Shop parking lot asphalt mill and replacement is in progress, and the asphalt should be laid today. And I'll finalize that project approximately September 15th with all the other components that need to be done. Facilities maintenance also had a very busy season. They replaced one HVAC unit at Kuntz Softball Clubhouse, replaced in-house 3 HVAC units at Pebblebrook Pro Shop, replaced 3 HVAC units at Kuntz Women's Boomers area, installed backstroke warning flags at Kuntz and Beardsley Pools, repaired 2 major electrical shorts, one at Lower R.H. Johnson from the Sports Pavilion to the Activity Center, and also at the Social Hall to Lapidary. Our aged 46-year-old infrastructure, it's challenged once in a while. We had 2 major electric lines have enough moisture or weakness in the conduit that it blew the wiring apart. So we had emergency repairs there. We installed a beer cooler outside for Lizard Acres in the Sports Pavilion storage yard. Installed ADA-assisted door openers, 2 at Beardsley Pool, R.H. Johnson Broadcast Club, and the Kuntz Art Club. Currently painting the exterior of Palm Ridge facility. This will be a long and ongoing project that you will see during the tours. And that references the property tours from the Properties Committee. Currently adding barbecues in 3 locations at Beardsley Park. And lastly, facilities maintenance completed 2,662 MPS work orders last year. That's the end of that report.
Go ahead and do the next one.
Okay. Early on the season, approximately July 1st, when the new fiscal year began, and because we intimately worked together as staff, the general manager and the accounting team and I knew that it had potential to roll out a very large initial capital items list. So for the last 2.5 months, we've been working diligently on meeting with clubs, vendors, doing a lot of negotiating. You'll see this number at the very, very end of my report, but at one point in time, our budget started off the initial list at about real close to $15 million. It's hard to put that into reality with the times that we're in, and and the restraints that we kind of keep ourselves in for dues increases. So for the last 2 months, we've done a lot of hard work and went to those locations to see if the items that have come up in the reserve study tool truly needed to be replaced or repaired in the year that they were allocated as their useful life being used up, which is FY 24-25. And so at the end of this presentation, I'm going to read you off the items that have been deferred. So I always start off with this list in the new category. Our new items can come in a few areas. They're either items that are not listed as assets on our reserve tool, or they're new items that have been brought up from a governing board or a member, or they're CR 13 items that come from chartered clubs and requesting new improvements or expansions to their club rooms. Starting off in new, we have the Sports Pavilion Lizard Acres Ballroom, bar and room renovation. This is an ongoing discussion and concept from last year's Sports Pavilion Committee that is proposed at $225,000. And you'll also notice, since you have the same document that I'm reading off of, to the far right, all these line items are going to go in front of all committees. So BNF, obviously, due to the financial impact, I will read off everything. You'll see what we read off to properties, and then I'm going to go across the list what affects chartered clubs. But I just wanted to make everybody aware that this entire list is the same list that all committees will receive. So I'm going to jump down to library expansion renovation, design and architecture and documents. Over the last couple seasons, our informations director, Katie O'Grady, and our librarian, Tracy, have come to the governing board and presented an expansion idea and renovation for the library. They were given approval to start moving forward in their internal design and discussions. So currently we are out with a request for proposal for an architect to give us their first level of project planning in this direction. I am asking for $70,000 in funds to take that information that we received from that RFP and be able to expand actual documents so that we can go to the next phase, which I would consider phase 3 of actual project cost planning. So that would be relevant in fiscal year 25-26. Moving on, we have an aged facility over at Kuntz, the Kuntz Tennis Facility. Currently it is 6 tennis courts. They are 50% in usable condition. The other 3 have been locked down for the last year and a half, 2 years approximately, due to the old Pro Bounce surface is just shot and wore out. We haven't been able to figure out the best way to reutilize that space, but staff, the general manager, and myself have been having long discussions about this, and with all the other requests coming from pickleball clubs, tennis, we feel that it's time that this facility gets consideration for renovation. So we're asking for $50,000 in funds to have architectural and design discussion documents so that we could possibly take this facility in the future and do a post-tension slab process, new fencing, reestablish a couple tennis courts, take 3 of the tennis courts and convert them to 12 pickleball courts, and leave enough space for a social gathering area for general member use of that facility. Moving on, Beardsley Park iron fence, 4 foot tall fence and approximately 7 gates that would enclose Beardsley Park. The idea of this is to have that iron fence be installed meandering through the landscape areas, and staff will no longer have to do the yearly put up and take down of the snow fence that's ugly and green and creates a lot of work for us to do that. This will enclose the park. The gates will always be open for everyday use like typical, but during events we'll be able to have a nice controlled access for ticketing and all those purposes. It'll be the same height as the one that's at the horseshoe area. And again, the gates will incorporate vehicle traffic to fulfill the equipment needs for the stage and then member traffic. Moving on, the metal shop does not currently have a Climatech control system to control their HVAC. We do have that system virtually everywhere else in the rec centers. What the system does is Facilities maintenance has a amazingly modern system that every room that we have as a club room can be controlled from one direct office. And the metal shop, with the expansion, the amount of air conditioning units that they have today, it can get abused if the garage doors are left open, so we are able to maintain, observe, and control that from the facilities maintenance offices. Moving on to the leather room. The leather room is busy. The club has new processes in how they're doing their leather work, and they don't have a large enough exhaust system for that smelly process of what they do with the leather. I can't go in details myself. This is more of a Russ Boston facilities maintenance project with the leather room, the club from leather, and they're asking for a new exhaust system for $7,500. Moving from new, we have all of our reserve study items next. You'll see a component in blue and a component in green. I'm kind of the subject matter expert on the blue part. The green that I'm going to discuss really doesn't affect charters clubs. It's all golf related items. But again, all for a full transparency, the full initial proposed capital budget is in front of you. Moving on, at Kuntz, softball field outfield fence replacement. We've discussed this for the last 3 years. Last year, the club came with a handful of new requests, and ultimately the governing board said this is the only request that should stay on the table and move forward in the future year, which is 24-25. So we are working on design for the outfield fence replacement. Social hall ceiling renovation at R.H. Johnson. This one's a little problematic. I have acoustic engineers that I'm working with. They were inviting the architectural teams that they work with that I could review and meet with, and to date, everybody is saying that they are too busy. I did kind of go back and ask, you know, even in your busyness, since it's not an emergency, you know, give me a ballpark. So at this point in time, that $400,000 costing is very low. I got word the other day that it's possibly up to double that price. So I've got a lot of homework to do over the next few months with these architectural vendors and get this cleared up. Please remember these prices that we give you today, each and every month will be updated if there's anything that becomes fluid or changes. It's really hard to get some of the clean costs in such a short period of time, so we do our best to present what we've got today. Moving on, the Palm Ridge pool deck, indoor pool deck replacement, which would be the same process and product as what we just received at the R.H. Johnson pool. Did I miss one? Oh, my apology. Silvercraft, millwork and countertops. So you'll notice in this project, there's a few line items that are going to be labeled as Silvercraft. Silvercraft is due for its millwork and countertops to be replaced. We've been doing this over the last 6 years for many clubs. Kuntz kind of started my tenure off in replacing all of the craft rooms 3, 4, and 5. We had some building additions where they, by nature, had new cabinets. Palm Ridge's stained glass and computer club are all new and updated due to renovations. And we're kind of worked our way here to R.H. Johnson. Last year we did rip and sew, and we have just a handful of clubs left. Now in this discussion about and making the Silvercraft Club aware, this project is going to be a little bit more than just millwork and countertops. It's going to be basically a club room renovation. So millwork and countertops to be, some millwork to be eliminated, some of it to be redesigned, and some of it to be refaced. I'm working very closely with the president and team of liaisons that they've got for this room remodel. We'll be also putting in a new grid ceiling and replacing the flooring. There'll be a small framed wall change in their office structure to make them more fluid, give a better layout, safer, and then they have a vault area where they keep their silver product, and we are going to put steel doors there so that becomes more secure and gives them a better organizational flow for their club. I'm working closely with them, so there'll be updates on this as well. Again, Palm Ridge Pool Deck, indoor deck replacement. We have the R.H. Johnson Lawn Bowling Facility, sewer line, electrical lighting conduit, and concrete repairs. In a little bit, when I get down to the end of this list, you will hear some deferred items. Currently, the Lawn Bowl facility, or the Lawn Bowl Club, has asked for their aged grass to be replaced with artificial turf. The reality of this is probably a $2 million project, replacing all 4 courts. We're working closely with the club on making sure that, member count justifies the need, logistics on how it best works for us being able to fund this as an association. And over this last summer, we had a big storm, or last spring, we had a storm come through and take down 2 of the light poles. And after evaluating the rest, all the bases were rusted, so we took out all the lighting. We've had an ongoing sewer issue there for years that we just deal with. We get the lines cleaned out, but if we were going to do a renovation in that space, now would be the time to address the sewer. So in this particular year, we are asking for funds to do a sewer line repair, electrical lighting conduit for the future, and the concrete repairs in those same zones. If I were to discuss the future a little bit, we met with an Australian vendor. Almost all of the product for renovating a lawn bowling facility comes from Australia, working with a local GC. So let's just say project planning process year 2, if we could get to a place where we discuss renovating the lawn bowling courts with artificial turf, then I would also be including what we've had for a placeholder for a long time, and that's the assets of all the concrete around that facility. So this will be a couple-year project overall if the governing board agrees. Moving on to Palm Ridge Pool Deck Outdoor. We'll do both pool decks in the same year. And then I'm going to skip down a few lines to the Kuntz softball field outfield scoreboard replacement. The club has come to facilities maintenance and shown them the issues they're having with the scoreboard not functioning correctly, and it's aged out and not really repairable. So they came to the general manager, myself, and accounting and said, we have an interested party that would like to fund this, but it kind of goes against all of our naming rights policies. So it has been determined that this is an asset of the rec centers. So we're proposing that scoreboard be replaced this next year. Lawn bowling. If you were to visit lawn bowling, you'll see that they have plastic chairs out there that are not agreeing with the weather. I've removed approximately 50% of their chairs for safety reasons. So they were a club that has had hand-me-downs for quite a few years, and as they've aged out, we've just removed them. So with the discussions of all of these improvements in that area, the club asked if they could have their benches replaced. That's 96 benches, so it's considerable. This price is based on the most expensive bench of $700 a piece. Those benches can be purchased for as low as $450. So right now we've put in the high cost. We are going to review with the manufacturers the quality of these benches so that we don't have a short useful life when the right purchase is determined. So you might see this go down to half the price. Moving on to pickleball courts at Palm Ridge. They get approximately 8 years useful life. We agree, and they need to be resurfaced. Courts 1 through 10. Last year or the year before, we did courts 11 through 18. Again, the same exact project over at R.H. Johnson, Sands pickleball courts. Those 8 courts are due. Moving on down to the Summit Hall Hardwoods, Sand and Seal. So instead of a typical operating expense of hardwood screen and seal, which is where we just scratch up the surface and recoat it, it is time for Palm Ridge to have all of its coatings taken down to raw wood and get a brand new first coat back on it. As I discussed earlier, Silvercraft ceiling tile replacement, Silvercraft flooring replacement with LVT flooring. Moving on to the R.H. Johnson pickleball courts. Those windscreens are dried out, aged out, and ready for replacement. I'll skip down a few more to the Kuntz Craft Rooms 3, 4, and 5 chairs replacement. It's 150 chairs. Those chairs are approximately $60 to $65 a piece. So those are being planned for replacement. Palm Ridge pickleball shade canopy. That is the Central Courts social gathering area shade canopy. If you go there and visit, you'll see that canopy is ripped and has met its useful life. And as far as the blue reserve study items, that is complete. The green is all about golf. So I'm not going to bore you with those details, but you have this here in front of you to just have a clear understanding of what the initial proposed budget for capital looks like. And then the final area is our yearly allowances, where unknown things arise. This has been a pretty dramatic year of allowances. Both last year, I think Cliff reported that at the CFO reported that at B&F committee, and we're kind of tracking in the same direction. Recently, we had a well pump go out, so these things are very important. Again, it's a $420,000 allowance. That's $20,000 more than last year for the thought of inflation. And these are for unknown items, and they have some categorization, not that it's absolute. And my last thing I'd like to kind of review with you is the gray section. As I mentioned to you before, that this list, not ashamed of it, but the reality is that when we have such an amazing reserve analyst tool, year to year, you might get a lot of assets that are due for replacement, but they might not be the reality. You will see the things that we have discussed over the last 2.5 months that have been deferred in this list. I'm going to kind of blaze through this a little bit, but I mentioned to you the lawn bowling courts, lawn bowling shade structures, lawn bowling concrete walkway replacement, and they do not come with a small price tag. The general manager and staff are interested in pursuing the discussion of the tennis facility at Kuntz in year 25-26 for a renovation for our general member use. Palm Ridge has some flat roofs that were due this year. They are in great shape. We are pushing them to, no, I apologize, that is inaccurate. So how we track our roofs from a roof replacement, meaning literally taking off all of the substructure and building it up to new, we hope that we never get to that place. If we do our due diligence and through our restores, so our restorative process that's listed on the blue section, we get a new 10 to 15 year warranty depending on what type of product I'm putting on that roof or the design of that roof, and that keeps us from having to go to a replacement factor. So technically in our reserve tool, the roof was due for replacement, and we are able to push that off to, like you see, FY 34-35. Lawn bowling walking track lighting replacement. I had a volunteer here today ask me about that. So talking about the big picture item at lawn bowling. At this current point in time, after meeting with the club, kind of organizing, what is in their interest to keep playing today and getting the place ready for a possible re-turf of the field, they all agreed to push off the lighting at least one more year. And in this season that I requested the conduits. So I'll get the infrastructure under the concrete and work with the lighting designer so that in the future the conduit's all there and all I have to do is purchase the lights, poles, and install them. Pickleball facility, moving on to Lapidary. Lapidary also came up with the same season as Silvercraft and trying to find balance in this budget. Lapidary is being pushed off for its millwork, countertops, flooring, and ceiling for one more year. The Deer Valley Pro Shop roof and tile replacement just isn't necessary at this time, so we've pushed that off a couple years. Same with Desert Trails. Pebblebrook Pro Shop interior flooring replacement. We determined to do that in the year that the irrigation plans and renovation, when that course will be closed. Echo Mesa Pro Shop flooring, interior flooring replacement, the same discussion when it goes into its irrigation replacement cycle. Beardsley Mini Golf just does not need new carpet. It's in great condition. Pebblebrook Patio Pro Shop patio resurface, also in excellent condition. R.H. Johnson Aquatic Shade Sales canopy will get a few more years, so we push that to 26, 27, and we'll review yearly. I mentioned lapidary flooring already. The Kuntz Stardust Theater seating area flooring. Also walked that facility. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that carpet. Maybe a little Ohio State, is that the reference? Yeah, but if you want Purdue, then that'll be in a future year. So it's really in good shape. There's no justification to replace that carpet, so we pushed that for a couple more years. The lecture hall is the same way. We did a stage renovation, so you have a little mismatch back here, but overall, when you walk this floor, it's clean and it's in good shape. There's no reason to replace that at this point in time. We pushed that a couple years. The Echo Mesa Pro Shop patio and restroom resurface, same thing when the course is closed for irrigation. There's nothing wrong with the Beardsley Spa Aquatic ADA lift, so we've pushed that to a future year. We'll just keep an eye on that. Kuntz Craft Rooms 3, 4, and 5 flooring replacement. I've been noticing that we put an 8-year life on LVT flooring, and I think Pete and I and Cliff, the CFO, were moving the tool to give LVT a 15-year useful life across the board because they just look excellent. So the product has really withstood the time, our heavy use, the cleaning. So that is going to help the tool in the long run, and all LVT will get a new useful life of 15 years instead of 8. And then Craft Room 5 is the same circumstance. So again, this budget started off at almost $15 million. We are today sitting at a initial proposal of $10,586,222, and that is in alignment to last year's approved budget for capital requests. So I've got time for any questions.
Any questions from the committee? And I will say that we don't have to decide on anything today. This was an informational only type of presentation, so we will get the details of this later. Yes, Nick.
Question for you, first of all. Are we going to have a tour of the facilities so we can see what the rooms are currently like for some of these renovations?
The Properties Committee does a tour of the entire campus. So what I would suggest is if you want to participate in that contact Kay Williams. She said, Kay, raise your hand. And she can see if you can join that.
Yeah, just I'd like to look at some of them.
Yep.
And my question really for Carl is on dependencies. I noticed the social hall ceiling and also social hall roof replacement. Is one dependent on the other? The same with the silverware, flooring and ceiling and millwork. Are they all dependent on each other?
No, on the social hall, the circumstance of doing a restore on the roof is just to maintain our roof so that it's waterproof, it's in great shape, and it continues our warranty cycle so that we don't ever get to that place of full replacement. But the interior conversation starts off with the simple fact that over the years, the little tiles and the acoustic V that you see when you use that space has aged out. There is no more product to replace the tiles. Over the last 2 years, the Properties Committee has asked for the lighting in there to be replaced. I tried accomplishing that last year. Our electrical infrastructure doesn't allow to have dimmable lighting in there with the lighting that exists. So we couldn't do a retrofit like I've done in all these other spaces. And R.H. Johnson was the last facility to get lighting renovations other than golf course buildings. So we thought about it. There's the only way to change that lighting is to go to a different ceiling style. The discussion led us to, we're going to change the ceiling like we did in the Lizard Acres pub that used to have the same exact acoustic style V-shaped ceiling. That we would go new, taller, flat, economical, sound engineered, new lighting, obviously new speakers, and then the effects of that are, you know, sprinkler heads need to be adjusted, the HVAC needs to be reconnected, and make sure that above grid that there's no obstacles. So that's why I think the architects are kind of pushing back that they don't want to go climbing up there and do all this investigation, so I have to find the right people to do that. But totally independent of one another, but I do know that it's fully possible because it was successful at the sports pavilion.
Okay, thanks. And my other question was, are you going to do the sound and the sound system as well in the social hall? I think the answer to that is yes.
Not a full reinvention of it, but definitely a new speaker system mounted in that acoustic panels.
Right, yeah, because I know that at least one of the clubs has got problems with the sound at the rear.
Okay, thanks for letting me know.
Okay, anything else for Carl?
Thank
Okay.
you, everyone.
Thanks, Carl. Okay, we're going to go to agenda item 5.05. This is a report from Nick Turner. He was the chairperson for the Chartered Club Space Utilization Requirements Working Group. This was a working group that was formed in April, I believe, March or April. And the purpose of the group, and I won't go through and steal Nick's thunder, but the purpose of the group was to take a look at space utilization on a strategic level, not to look at, club track versus this versus that or that kind of thing. But that was the purpose of that. This group completed their charter and issued their final report on June 30th. So this will be the first time that this committee will have seen it. The purpose of Nick's presentation is they're looking for a recommendation to move this to the governing board. I think that's correct, Nick.
That is correct, yes. I don't
Okay.
know whether you want to ask the committee at this meeting whether to put it forward or not, or whether give people time to think and absorb.
We'll ask, and if they want to defer it, we can do that.
Yeah,
So I'll
okay.
turn it over to Nick Turner.
And as a matter of information, we'll also be doing the same presentation to the Properties Committee, and they too will have the opportunity to decide whether they want to move it forward to the governing board. Or also, I believe, individually. They could forward some recommendations, but not others. Those of you who've had the opportunity to look at the report and the presentation will understand that there's a lot here. I'm going to assume that all the members of the committee have looked at it and read it. Members of the audience here, I will assume that some of you may have, some of you may have not, because, as I say, there is a lot here. I did promise myself that I wouldn't produce a presentation that was full of lots of slides, full of lots of text. And as you will see later on, I failed miserably in that. I couldn't think of a way of presenting this information in a manner that didn't do that. So there's a lot of information here. I am working on the assumption that the committee have had time to look at this, so I am going to move fast. If you don't have time to read one of these slides, they are on BoardDocs. And if people do have questions that come up later, as I said, we are going to be doing a repeat of this at the Properties Committee, so there is another opportunity for people to ask questions and so on coming up in the future. So if we can move through to the agenda side, please. I'm just simply going to go through pretty quickly why we're here, who was involved, what we did, what did we find, the requirements that came up as a result, and what else that we recommend. So, why are we here? We move on to next slide, please. You'll see down at the bottom there, we were not asked to find fault with ClubTrack. That's one of the things that we were not asked to do. We were asked with looking at the requirements for a software system that would help the recreation centres look at space utilization. How much of our space is being used and when and who is using it. So for example, how often is this room in use, who uses it, and is it full? How often are the card rooms at Beardsley used, who is using them, and how full are they? What kind of information, how we can capture that information, how that information can be provided to the rec centre management so they can make sensible decisions about allocation of space in future. We were not tasked with allocating the space. So as you have your annual meetings with scheduling and they tell you where your club will be meeting for the next calendar year, we were not any part of that decision making. That still rests with the recreation centres. Our task was to involve the software requirements for tools that would make that job a lot easier for the recreation centres. You'll see from the second bullet here on this one about the scope of the requirements being involving chartered clubs, cardholder private usage, non-cardholder and external organisation usage of association spaces and facilities. Now, if you translate that into a software tool that will tell me how much space those people are using, when are they using it, what's left, could they have been in a different room, who didn't get space because of that, that rapidly adds lots and lots of complexity into the scope. And what we had to do as a group was, of course, consider that and then prioritise accordingly around that. So moving on to the next slide, who were the people in the group? Mainly from chartered clubs and properties committees, with Casey sitting alongside us. Casey is the recreation manager who is responsible largely for the use of these spaces. You also notice that there are 2 governing board members on there, and those of you who were at some of the governing board meetings towards the end of last fiscal year will notice that there were some questions asked about the presence of governing board members on subcommittees and working groups. Jack, our chairman here, asked me to lead this group, and my first response back to him was, only if you don't influence it. And that, if you like, preempted a lot of the questions that came up later. Kay Williams was appointed, she was not the chair of the Properties Committee at the time, and she was appointed by the chairman of the Properties Committee to sit on this working group because of her past experience working on space utilisation matters here. So those are the members of the group. And moving on to the next slide, we met weekly from that mid-April until the end of June. So we worked very quickly and very intensely for 6 weeks or so, 6 weeks or so, 7 weeks or so. We interviewed staff. We interviewed several members of staff. In the written report, you'll see who they were. We talked to several members of staff. We took account of the work from an earlier subcommittee here, the Chartered Club Subcommittee, that worked on interviewing club presidents and other club officers about what they wanted to see from ClubTrack. So we took all of that work into account. And we worked on business problems, features and requirements. So those of you who have been involved in software may know a little bit about that, but moving on to the next slide, please. One of the things that we do with, if you like, requirements gathering, requirements prioritization is not start with what the requirement is, you start with the problem that the business is trying to solve. So what was the problem that the recreation centre was trying to solve? That then spins up features, and the features result in requirements. So what's a feature? What's a business problem? A business problem is something like, we want to be able to do something, but we can't. The features of the software are the things which enable you to do that, and then the requirements are the detailed work. So, for example, you may have a requirement for security for your application. A feature of that security may be administration of user logins, and then the requirements are what are the users allowed to do. An administration user who can do everything, a club president who can only look at a minimum amount of information. So that can rapidly spin up 10, 20, 30 requirements, just from simply saying you need user security. So what did we find? Move through to the next couple of slides, please. With talking with the recreation centre staff, we came across lots and lots of business problems. And I should say that some of these actually are currently being overcome or mitigated with better reporting and understanding of what's going on within the recreation centres. But some example business problems here. Too many access points for some spaces, which reduce the effective control of check-ins. So people going into a facility, scanning the recreation cards, being acknowledged by the system, and yet there's another door somewhere else, another access somewhere else, and people are just walking in and not scanning their cards. So it's just issues with access control. So how do we stop that? Some rooms we don't really know the actual numbers of people in there. So you see there from the 5th or 6th bullet down, one of the kind of principles that there is around ClubTrack is that everybody's going to use it and everybody's going to be accurate and everybody's going to be honest. No, that's not happening. There are other issues, for example, if we move on to the next slide, please, up at the top there. For the fitness clubs that use the pools, they're not actually scanning into ClubTrack. The monitor at the pools is recording their presence and is supposed to push a button to say, for example, I'm here for aquasizers or I'm here for water fitness. And sometimes they don't push the button, sometimes they push the wrong button. So although the data is being captured, it may not be accurate and it's not in ClubTrack. And again, some of these, I'm just looking at this slide again yesterday, some of these issues here are actually written as what the solution should do. If you want to treat them as a business problem, you just turn them into a negative. The solution should be easy to use for non-computer literate users. You know, the business problem is the system isn't easy to use, especially for our demographic. So moving on to slide 11, the requirements. We ended up with about 10 main features and 108 requirements. It's amazing how quickly you can get up to a large number of requirements. And those features are around user security, room data. If you want to know what the utilization of space is in a room, you not only need to know the number of people in the room, you also need to know what the capacity of the room is. If you want to know the capacity of the room, you need to know how it's been set up. What's the capacity of the Summit Hall at Palm Ridge set when it's set up for banquet? What's the capacity when it's set up theatre style? What's the capacity when it's set up with something else? Those of you who are familiar with the Beardsley card rooms, there are in fact 3 rooms there, Ocotillo, Chicory, and Mesquite, which can be opened up to one large room or subdivided into 2s and 1s in 2 or 3 different ways. So how do you measure the usage of those rooms when you only have 1 room in the system, but the club is actually using 3 of them? So it can get very complicated very quickly. So having produced 108 requirements based around these features, we had to prioritize them. And so we prioritize them as A, B, C, and D. And A being a must-have. If we are going to strictly meet the scope, then that requirement's an A. If we are going to produce some nice-to-haves, they become a B, something that we could get away with not having at all, a C, and then out of scope. Some requirements we came up with as a result of our discussions, and then on further reflection, they were just not in the scope of what we did. So what I'm going to do now is go through every single one of those 108 requirements in detail. No, I'm not. I'm going to just pick out a few examples for you. If we can move on to the next slide. Here we have some which I know will be interest to those in the room and some of those who are watching, which is the requirements that club officers said they would like to see coming out of Club Track. The scope we were given was not to assist club officers. The scope we were given was about the requirements that the recreation centres used. And so these requirements automatically go down into the nice-to-haves. They're not a must-have to strictly meet the scope. But so those are the requirements, as you can see there, things like year-to-year comparisons, periodic membership reports, and so on. That data may be available at some point in the future, and we have some proposals in terms of how we might develop some reporting that could help in that way. But they are lower priority, strictly according to the criteria we're given. So we can move on to the next one, please, slide 13. Just note that on slide 13 is that Club Track itself already meets some of these requirements. We were not tasked with what Club Track needs to do next. We were tasked with finding generic requirements for the space utilization and the club participation rates. That's what we were asked to do. And so there is some duplication here over which Club Track continually does. But some of the things that come up, and to show you some of the complexity on here, are we on 13 here? If we can scroll down to, it might be on the next slide. No, it's on the next slide. Can we move to the next slide, please? Yeah, this will be slide 14. And number 22 there, just down towards the bottom. Fast processes to cope with large numbers of attendees. Now, that's not something that you would think about with an application like Club Track. So when you're going into your craft room to spend an hour working by yourself, you just scan your card, you say, I'm in the craft room. Fast processes for a large group may not be something that you automatically would think about. So I did a little math. If you've got a large club with several hundred members and 200 of them are going into the social hall for your annual election meeting, and it takes 10 seconds to scan in every individual as they go in there, it will take you 30 minutes to get people into the room. So there's an edge case, as we call it. Every now and again, with this software system, you're going to have bottleneck problems unless you can make it faster for large numbers of people to go into a room and scan in. And there are ways you can do that. Because at the moment, if, for example, just say it's boomers, you go in there, you scan, it comes up, you have to press boomers. The next person comes up, scans, has to say, I'm boomers. If the system knew that the social hall was being done by boomers at that particular time, all you have to do is scan. And if somebody, scan, next one, ready for the next one, scan, ready for the next one. If somebody comes along who's not a member of boomers, it's scan, beep, and you've got somebody trying to get in who's not a member of boomers. So it's how you can speed things up and how you can make sure that you've still got accuracy while these things are going on. So these are some of the requirements that we have and the thought processes that we went through when it came to prioritization. So we can move through to number 15. And on the number 49, I think, which is right off the bottom, you probably can't see it from here. It's a data accuracy thing. There we go. How do we differentiate between multiple scans of an individual and which are somebody trying to boost their club attendance figures and somebody who's legitimately there? and needs to scan twice. So, and again, examples here, you're going into the craft room, you want to do half an hour's work on your crafts, you go in and you scan and you say, I'm here. Half an hour later, there's a class starting, and you are going to go to that class. So you scan again to say, I'm at the class. So how do we report that, and how do we know that you were legitimately there to do some work, and you were legitimately there for a class, and maybe for another class later on? And how do we differentiate that from a club that's trying to boost its figures? Because believe it or not, some of them do that. I know nobody here would, but that has been known to happen. We're not talking about the odd error, but that can sometimes happen. And moving on to 16, some example requirements which we decided were out of scope. Number 41 there, off-site tracking. If we're looking at the needs of the recreation centre for participation rates and for space utilisation, we don't really need to be tracking off-site activity of clubs, sportsmen going out hiking at Lake Pleasant. We don't need to be somehow trying to get the attendee information into Club Track, because that doesn't solve the scope. It might be of information which is of benefit to the club, but unfortunately it's not going to be of benefit in terms of the scope we were given. So we produced those 108 requirements. We prioritized them into those A, B, C, and D groups. The spreadsheet we produced has a blank column that you've probably seen, which says sub-priority. That can be filled in later depending upon what budgeting approvals and what the governing board decides into actually stack ranking, you know. Okay, we've got 50 high priority requirements. Which one do we do first? So you end up with another prioritization within that group. So while we were doing this work, talking with the staff at the rec centres, talking together as a group, and of course as a group we were club officers, as a group we were committee members, we also came up with some recommendations as to what we think should happen next. And we just came up with rather a lot. And it's these recommendations and whether we proceed or not, which we will be talking about whether we should be moving those forward to the governing board and which ones should not be. So moving through to option 1, which is do nothing. These recommendations and options are in an order of complexity. They start simple and they get more and more complex. To a certain extent, you can take complexity as a proxy for cost. The more complex, the more it's going to cost. So the first one is do nothing. You'll see as we go through these that they're also not mutually exclusive. There are some that you could do several of these. Obviously, do nothing is probably mutually exclusive, but there are others where you could do several and not necessarily do one. And for every one of these, we put through some pros, some cons, and what our recommendation is. And the do nothing recommendation, we suggest that we don't do that we should do something. The reason for that is, basically, if the system was working as people expected it to work and was providing the information to the recreation centres that people expected it to be providing, we wouldn't be here, I wouldn't be here doing this now. So do nothing is we regarded as not being an option because we were brought together to suggest things that may be done. So moving on to option number 2, which is to just limit the scope of the whole project and software to shared user space. So clubs like automotive, it's obvious they have dedicated space. A lot of the craft clubs have dedicated space. So does it really matter on a day-to-day basis what the utilization of that space is? In other areas where there is shared space, there are potentially more issues in terms of overcapacity and undercapacity and swapping around of clubs who are using that shared space and changing days of the week and so on. So should we limit the scope of the solution to just using shared space? Again, we recommend not pursuing this because although it protects the current investment, it does reduce the scope and the complexity of what happens in the future. You're still not going to get space utilization reporting out of the system. The best you're going to get out of there is club participation rates. How many people were there? How many people belong to the club? What's the participation rate? But you're still getting no comparison of the numbers against the rooms and so on. So again, we said not to pursue that option. Third recommendation is cancel ClubTrack. It would save us some money, but to be honest, I know some people stood back in horror when they found out what the actual costs of ClubTrack are. With my experience in the world of software, I think it represents a very, very low fee and remarkable value for money for what you're getting at the moment. It's not actually an expensive solution in software terms. Again, we suggest that if somebody is talking about cancelling ClubTrack, or if ClubTrack is cancelled, that you don't do that until you've got a replacement. And if the governing board and the administration decide that they are going to do a replacement, then ClubTrack should keep going until that replacement's ready. So that would be our recommendation there. The fourth option is actually to invest some money to enhance ClubTrack so that it starts to meet that initial goal of being able to produce information on space utilization as well as just the who was there for the club. That investment needs to be balanced, if you like, against what people call the sunk cost fallacy. Is like, are we only putting money in because of the money we've already spent? And so that's something that needs to be looked at as the governing board make those decisions. But this means that ClubTrack's going to start producing the information that it was expected to produce. We suggest that this is something that the governing board looks at, but only if they're prepared to allocate the funding to do it. And that will require some investigation as to what the funding is going to be in order to do that. Option 5, I don't really want to go into too much of an explanation about Power BI, what it does and how it does things. But one potential option, Power BI is a software reporting tool, BI standing for Business Information, that can draw data from multiple sources and put it into one report. And it is the tool that's used to capture the data of the clubs which are being recorded, for example, the aquatics clubs that are being recorded in TEG, and merge that with the information that's in ClubTrack. So it can pull that information from 2 different places. So our suggestion is that Power BI could be used alongside some static information on room sizes, room capacities, and other information as needed, one of which is how long do people stay in the room, which is another issue that you have when it comes to space utilization. You were in the craft room doing work on your own project, and then the class started, and lots of people came in and scanned in for the class. You didn't scan in again, but you stayed for the class. There are 3 of you go into a classroom at 9 in the morning. 2 of you stay 3 hours, 1 of you stays 4 hours. So how do we know how many people were in that classroom at noon, and do we know how many people were in that classroom at 1? We don't. If we can bring together some averages, some data, some typical scenarios, put those into spreadsheet, access database, pull that information in from Power BI and compare it to what's in ClubTrack, we can start getting some approximations of how busy rooms are at certain times. Our recommendation is that we investigate this. There are certain issues with Power BI. One is the skills to use the software. My understanding is that there's only one person here that works in the rec centres that has knowledge of the tool. That adds risk if they leave. What do you know, and somebody wants a new report or a tweak to a report, what do you do? So we could get some outside help to do that, and that outside help becomes expensive, and the institutional knowledge of how it works, what's it set up, the data, and so on, it is, not gained if you do that. But again, we think it's something that should be looked at, because it's a good tool, it's a powerful tool, we have it here, we have some skills, and it opens up some possibilities. The next option 6, expand the use of ClubTrack to all users of the recreation centre facilities. This was in the scope we were asked to look at. This adds huge complexity very, very quickly, and so we suggest that this is not pursued, that we keep the information and the scope of the project down to the clubs and recreation centre users, and not all the other groups that may be wanting to use the facilities. For example, if somebody wants to have a celebration of life or a wedding celebration and wants half of Palm Ridge to do that, do we really care what the space utilisation is? I don't think so. They've rented the room, they've paid for the space. Option 7, this is an interesting one. We did initially briefly think about this as a group, and I believe at least 2 members of our group came up with this, the use of technology to essentially automatically detect when somebody walks into a room and whether they're a member of the club or not. We dismissed it as being expensive and perhaps a bit too early in terms of the technology. And then when we were talking with staff members, we discovered that staff members had also come up with the very same idea, so we actually kept it in. This solves your problem of how long did people stay in the room. It can solve your problem of whether the person who walked into the room is a member of the club or not. There are privacy issues, obviously. Our recommendation here again is another investigation. Actually, how much would it cost us to do this? Is the technology available? And, is it something that will be deferred? Because this is something which is going to happen. And a lot of the technology still does exist today. A lot of corporations, when you walk through the front door unlocks as you approach because it knows that you're a member of staff and it's read your ID card before you've got to the door. The technology exists. It's a question of expense and benefit against that expense for the recreation centres. But again, we suggest an investigation. May not necessarily be a long investigation and not an expensive investigation. When I say we recommend an investigation, we're not talking about the things that Carl does, where we need to bring in a team of outside consultants for several $1,000s. We're talking about phone calls, talking to 1 or 2 vendors and so on, just a little quick investigation just to find out feasibility. Option 8, build our own. One of the things which is apparent to us now and has been apparent to the recreation centre management for quite a long time is that there is no commercially available off-the-shelf software that an organisation like Sun City West can use. You may think that such software, well, they can sell it to Sun City, they can do Sun City West, there's all those places in Florida. Well, they're all different. They all have subtly and largely different methods of operation. And there just isn't a market there for a commercial software vendor to produce software. As a result, we use highly customized versions of other pieces of software that was designed to do other things. So our membership information is actually in the golf club software because golf clubs have members. And so it's a good place to start. There is software available from organizations. It's based in the cloud. Several organizations and businesses do this. There's just one screenshot here. But these are designed, as they call them, low code. So there's very little code doing. You build it yourself. You do lots of point and click to set up the flows and processes. And you can build on and customize against existing solutions. So you see here that they have things like education management, attendance management, admission management, university event organization. And if university event organization rings a bell, it's because we actually use the university event software for managing our ticketing and so on for events. We're using something like that already. But tools like this, they all come ready and they're pre-integrated. We then just have to tweak them to do what we want them to do. That said, it can be very expensive, which again is another issue that the governing board needs to look at when they view these things. Again, we suggest investigating this option, just having a look. But it could rapidly become, again, very expensive. So we need to think about, if we're going to do this, you need to think about scoping. What do we build first? Are we going to sunset some other tools we use and move them onto this? It's a long-term kind of decision. So those were some options around what we can do around the software and around the scope that we were given. And then there were some other recommendations we came up which were a little bit out of scope. So if we move through onto these, one is reevaluate the current automatic reports. Now, I know that Casey and the team are working on more and better reports at the same time, but I was thinking the current reports, I don't know how many club presidents, secretaries and so on use the current reports that come out, but we might be wasting our time sending them out. So again, it's something that we recommend that we should look at. Do we keep sending out reports monthly to everybody? Should we move them on demand? If you move them on demand, then somebody in the Recreation Centre administration has to produce them. So are you replacing one effort with others? But again, it's something that we suggest that should be taken a look at, and some of the, particularly the current reports, the production and distribution of those should probably stop. I know there are new and better reports in the works that Casey and the team have been working on those, and I think they're going to provide better information and be more usable for the clubs. Which brings us to recommendation number 2. If the clubs and the club officers feel that they're getting concrete benefits from the use of the solution, they're more likely to make sure that it's used properly and it's used accurately. And so the more benefits that we can actually provide to the clubs, I think the better the use of the solution will be. This was out of scope. The initial reasons for the purchase of the solution was not for club benefits, but it was to provide good and better data for the administration. If you can provide good information to the clubs, then, as I say, they're more likely to be enthusiastic and supportive of it. So that, again, is something that we recommend, that the scope of whatever the solution, if it continues to be Club Track or it's something else, be expanded to include better information and reporting for the clubs. Recommendation number 3, enhancements for some other uncovered issues. Slow speed of check-in is one that we mentioned already. There are just some examples here. Again, lack of monitors in other areas. One of the issues and one of the requirements that we put in is the ability for outdoor facilities to have scanning on arrival, tennis courts, pickleball courts, and so on. That it's easier to monitor people who are using them. So, that could be, as was suggested, when people go to the pickleball courts at Palm Ridge, that there is some methodology by where they can go through the monitor station and scan in as they go through there. But that helps solve the open access problem, which means it's difficult to police and patrol who is going in and using facilities at certain times. If you think, well, people just go in and they scan, they're a member of the club. Well, that's not always a member of the club. It's not always a resident. And so those have caused some issues. Next recommendation, number 4, self-service for club officers. At the moment, the club officers have to produce a comma-separated values file to send through the club track in order to have their membership rosters updated. It'd be nice if you could just do that for themselves. That opens up other issues in terms of security and what happens when an officer finishes their term and then a new officer comes in. How do you manage and control all of those passwords and access as humans, unfortunately? But again, that would take pressure off the recreation centres. It would free up time with the recreation centres and with IT if the club officers could just do it themselves. Not every club will have officers who are sufficiently computer literate in order to do this kind of thing for themselves. But at the moment, not every club has officers who are computer literate enough to produce a CSV file. So we need to, if we're going to free time up in the administration, we have to find a way of making it easier for the officers to do these things for themselves. Recommendation number 5, again, out of scope for what we're asked to do, but more and more clubs are wanting to get rid of cash and checks at the same time as more and more people are wanting to reduce the amount that the recreation centre spends on credit card payments. Some clubs have very, very little cash to manage. I'm secretary of a card club. We have a $5 annual membership fee and we pay $1 a week to play. Other clubs have several $1,000s a week that they need to manage. And at the moment they cannot, or it's tough for them to take credit card payments. So our suggestion is that, again, the recreation centres investigate the provision of a framework, a standard way of clubs to accept credit card payments, which is going to be PCI compliant, which means nobody's going to be able to steal your card number, and meets all the legal and PCI requirements for taking credit cards. And if we can develop a standard way of doing that over our computer networks and so on, those clubs can then start moving away from cash, start moving away from checks, and reduce the issues and management and time and costs that they have of dealing with those. And the final recommendation is something which I did see in the annual report that the General Manager gave in June, I believe, on the future plan, the master plan for Recreation Centre of Sun City West was a section on IT. We would really like to see that. It's difficult to understand where and what and how much we spend on IT and what the vision and plan is for the future. Now, we do have technical requirements in here of things like, you know, whatever the software solution is, it needs to be supportable by our IT staff. If our policy is cloud first, it needs to be cloud first. If it's going to be installed on premise, it has to be something we can support, and hopefully would use things like our existing Oracle database licensing so that we're not, you know, going to be incurring any expense that way. But it would be of benefit, I think, for administration members, the governing board, and other committees to have a picture of what the vision is for IT here at Sun City West, because it's going to become more important over time. And so our final recommendation is that there is a vision for IT as part of that long-term plan. And I'm now going to pause and take a drink.
Okay, thank you, Nick.
I'm sorry. I'd like also to thank the members of the group, which I didn't do, the working group, which I didn't do. We, as I said, we met every week for, what, 2.5 months, 8 weeks. We did a lot of work. We did a lot of back and forth. There was a lot of reading and proof checking and ideas and suggestions that came into the report. So we worked quite intensely for a relatively short period of time. So I'd like to thank everybody because we had just about full attendance all the time and involvement and feedback from the group. So thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Yes, thank you to the working group. So, Nick has given his presentation. The written report is attached in your packet, so you can take it and read it. There is also another handout that's available to you that should be included with that. These are the appendices, which are the 108 requirements. They are sorted in different ways, so there's 3 versions of the same thing, but you can look at them in whichever way you want. So the question is now, I mean, there's who feels comfortable moving this forward at this point? Imagine my surprise. So I'm sure you want to take it and read it and digest it and come up with questions. So we'll put this as an agenda item for next month, our first meeting in October, to go over this, and then we can get into a little in-depth, ask questions of Nick and the working group members, so that we can get a level of comfort to move this forward or not, or move it in a different way, in a different form. So, okay, thank you, Nick. Thank you, everybody. Our last agenda item, before we open it up to the floor, is liaison assignments. Every one of the committee members here will be assigned a group of clubs, depending upon the club category. And those categories are arts and crafts, cards, fitness and dance, hobbies, performing arts, social, and sporting clubs, and all sports clubs. And all of the clubs are put into a bucket. So the goal here is I'm going to have all of you arm wrestle for which categories you want to be with. We have to replace 3 people who left the committee in June. So and I know that some of the current assignments want to be changed. So I'm going to just sit back and let you all do this. And if this doesn't work, then I'll assign. So.
Although I have found very interesting working with sports, I was drafted this time last year to do sports. So I would like to relinquish sports, and I would like to work with Carol on hobbies, since her partner is no longer sitting on the committee.
Okay, so I know that if we had a round table, this would be easier. So, but please talk amongst yourselves.
Okay, I'm next. I would like to stay with arts and crafts.
Okay, I'll go next. I'd like to stay with social.
You said performing arts was,
That's me.
That's Casey.
oh,
Yeah.
just kidding, sorry. It'll actually be,
I,
it'll actually be Robert.
yeah, if Vicky wants to relinquish,
I do.
if Vicky wants to relinquish sports, I don't mind picking that up if somebody else wants to take over fitness and dance.
I'll take over fitness and dance then.
I would like to stay with my hobbies clubs, and I'd love to have Vicky join me. I think that would be wonderful.
I'd like to stay with cards for consistency, please.
Being the new guy and not knowing any better, I'll just take what's left.
I'm in the same position as you.
We need at least one more person with arts and crafts because we have like 20 some odd clubs.
I'll take it.
Is it was it, I can't remember off the top of my head, was it a two-person before?
Yes, it was.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so let me see if I've got this. It went very well, actually. So I have Connie wants to stay with social. Judy wants cards. Correct me if I'm wrong here, guys. Okay. Let's see here. Nick and Paul are sports. Vicky, you're doing with Carol hobbies. So hobbies goes to Carol and Vicky. And Jamie is doing fitness and dance. Did I miss anything? And Maria and Kathy are doing arts and crafts. Well, that's Casey. That's Casey. Yeah, so you can just. Okay, well, that was easy. Good job. Okay, so that ends that part of the agenda. Let me get back to my agenda. Committee comments. Kathy?
A great start to a great year to come. Thank you. very
Yeah,
much.
thank you. Nick?
Nothing at the moment.
Okay. Carol?
Congratulations to Nick and his gang for doing a wonderful and very thorough job.
Maria?
No comments.
Judy?
Nothing now.
Jamie?
No comments.
Nothing else.
Paul?
I'm just impressed by Nick's work there with the data situation. Very, very difficult and huge subject, and great job. I really appreciate your effort.
Okay. Connie?
Well, all I can say is ditto, since I'm the last one. I agree with Carol and Paul. It was an excellent report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Okay, now we're going to turn it over to the floor, and I'm going to see if I have any questions online. I have no questions online. Do I have any questions from the floor? Yes, please go over to the microphone and give us your name and your rec card number, please. And if you don't speak into the microphone, we'll flash that naughty light at you. No, the microphone, no, the, right there, that Pete's pointing to.
You want us to sign in as
Yes,
well?
please.
Okay. Deborah Sinelli, 123357. Okay. In speaking with the people at the rec center, for the last couple of months, they've told us that there was going to be a revision of Club Tracker and that it was hopefully supposed to be done in September. So is that not happening due to the report that Nick gave us today?
I'm not aware of anything. Casey?
Yeah, my last couple of email blasts that I've sent out, I've mentioned. So we're in the process of trying it out starting October, we hope. But we've put in the request with Club Track, School Vision. So hopefully it will be starting up the beginning of October.
What is the revision? What have they done different?
So what my recommendation was, Pam, I'm going to use your club because it's huge. Pam is president of Boomers. So right now you guys are collecting a report that probably has thousands of pages. She's got a club of 2,000, maybe more now. And this one will actually bring it down more than half. So if Pam goes to the club September 1st at 3 p.m., and then she goes again Saturday at 2 p.m., you're getting all of those tractions, line item after line item. So this new revision is going to tell you how many times Pam attended in, we'll just say 1 month. It'll actually be broken down into quarterly basis. So from January 1 to March 31st, it'll tell us how many times your members participated in your activity. So the number might be 30 rather than you having to go through and check how many times yourself and do that on your own.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
So it's a reporting revision.
It's exactly what you guys probably want with a lot less work.
No. I keep asking for this report, and I have to go to Tim to get it, and he has been in touch with Club Tracker. I have emailed Club Tracker. The report that we would like to have is the one that tells you every person that came in on our Monday for our meeting, at what time they came in, and and it's for that week. I just got the latest report that I have been, and I've been working with Tim since January on this, and it's like nobody can get it right.
What club are you?
Stitchers.
Oh.
And I have, I have been in multiple times. And I have asked for this report so that we have a rundown of exactly who came in and when they came in. I got a report this past month. Somebody came in on a Thursday. We never meet on a Thursday. But it just has one person came in at 10 o'clock on Thursday, but I have no idea who that is. So I have no way of going back to that person and making sure that it was just a mistake on which activity they clicked on, and it looks like we were in the room using it when we weren't. And
so I know that you guys meet every Monday, 8
Yes.
hours. And if somebody checked in on Thursday, it was probably operator error, which goes to Nick's recommendation in there that if somebody is just trying to click on Stitchers, they clicked something else.
So in order to get the report I need, I have to go in now to the rec center
Yes.
and asked Tim to please print me off that report. And I've had to do that every month. And he has assured me that he has talked to Club Tracker people. I've emailed Club Tracker, and it's like nobody responds to the emails that we send.
Well, you can't communicate with School Vision. It would just kick right back. It goes straight to Club Track, which is Tim Peterson, and then the IT group.
And I have done that. Of course, I don't report to the in-school vision. Couple of other points to move on. The use of the new tools you had on slide 25, Nick, what information goes to them in order for them to use that? I mean, does our personal information go to them? I mean, through our number here at Sun City West, people can look up our number and they know our address, our phone number, all that stuff. So what type of information do they get?
Depends how, it depends on how, when developed and used, it depends what you want to capture. But these kinds of applications, those kinds of solutions are designed around privacy.
Okay.
And, you know, everything is stored encrypted. The only way you could get the data out is if the administration, you could go in. Like at the moment with Club Track, all I can see is what clubs I belong to when I scan in.
Right.
Katie O'Grady and her team will be able to see much more information. So it's a matter of the permissions of the user. But remember, at the moment, your information is probably in several systems already around the rec centers.
Okay. Is there a minimum number of members that you have to have in a club, Katie, to have a club? I mean, do you guys require that there are at least 25 members? And what is that? Because I've looked for it and I can't find it anywhere.
You want to talk about that, Jack? I'll answer first, and then you can piggyback. So to start a club for a craft club is 50 members. Non-craft club is 75 members. In the past, just like what we saw this last year, it used to be about 20% of your membership can decrease from that starting point. Unfortunately, I have no way of understanding and knowing where that verbiage went, but it's no longer in the RR&Ps. So Jack.
So the numbers that Casey just gave you are the same numbers that you have to have in order to maintain a club. One of the things that we're looking at is, you know, when a club starts to lose members or the activity starts to lose popularity, you know, on the backside of its life cycle, one of the things we look at is, do you have an assigned space, a dedicated space? If you have a shared space, what is your participation level? What is your activity level? So there's a lot of numbers that go into that. If we look at a club and say, okay, you've got 12 active members, and you're supposed to have 50. Can you merge with another club? As a club, do you wish to continue? You know, those types of questions. So, but yes, the numbers are 50 and 75.
Okay. And if the club, you know, is given a room on a certain day for a certain amount of time, like we have ours on Monday from 8 to 4 in the afternoon, sometimes we have people come in and teach us classes, but the morning hours mostly is when people just come in and they stitch and they do whatever. If we have a scheduled time, then what difference, Nick, does it make if we have 2 people at 8 o'clock and 20 at 10 and 5 at 11? And, you know, I mean, if that's our scheduled time, and it's a drop-in thing. Not everybody has to be there at 8 o'clock. It's drop-in, stitch, it's when you can. So, I guess if you're assigned a room and you have a specific time frame, what difference would it make how many people are in that room?
That's the question for Casey and the recreation centres. I was only, the project I was involved in was only looking at how we count the people who are in that room.
Okay, and the other thing was too, Tim told me that for a while, that when we were first using Club Track, people were signing in, okay? And then they'd leave the room and they'd go to the bathroom or whatever, and they'd come back in and they'd sign in again, because they thought that's what they had to do. Tim told me that it only counts you once for the day, that it doesn't count you double. That's what he told me. So therefore, you can't manipulate your numbers by signing in, you know, going out of the room and signing in and going out of the room and signing in.
That's one of the problems that Nick pointed out, is that if you're in a room at 8 a.m. and you go out of the room, go to the bathroom, and then you come back in, you scan in again, your scan will be accepted. And there is a report that'll show that you scanned in twice during that day. But what'll happen is during the reporting, you'll only be counted once in the reporting.
Mm-hmm.
Club Track will let you scan in, and
Right.
it'll include that. So the answer is yes and no.
Okay.
The answer is yes, you will be counted twice. No, one of the things that are reported is a unique individual.
Okay. So Casey, for me to get the report that I'm asking for all this time that I've been working with Tim and emailing back and forth, there's no way to get it except to go down to the rec center to get it.
You
They
can-
can't send that to me.
You can email Tim and he can send it to you.
Okay.
Well,
and
not Tim,
and-
not Tim
and I-
specifically, clubtrack@suncitywest.com.
Yeah, and I do that and I don't get the report.
Well, then
And
shoot
then
me
if
an
I
email.
email Tim, he tells me I have to get in touch with Club Track.
No,
Yeah.
shoot me an email then.
All right. And then the last question, Carl, is this Carl? Hey, you said you were looking at replacing the chairs in Kuntz in rooms 3, 4, and 5. Why? They seem to be in great condition. They're padded, they're comfortable, they work. And if you do replace them, where do the old ones go? And what are you replacing them with?
They're actually amazing chairs, but what you don't see in here is how many, respectfully, elderly folks complain on how heavy they are.
They
And
are
they
heavy.
are very heavy.
They are heavy.
So last year we felted them, and the felt is just collecting garbage on them. They look icky if you take a look. I know, but they are very heavy.
Ours look pretty good in room 5.
And the majority has said, can we please have a lighter, more mobile chairs? We have definitely gotten our useful life out of them. We are not interested in throwing them away, so we were gonna try to find the best solution for repurposing them. If you want an idea what we were going to purchase, if you would stop by the Zymergy Club, they have what we call church chairs, and they're light, very comfortable, very cost-effective.
But then they're padded also.
They are.
Okay.
But I encourage you to stop at Zymergy, peek at their chairs, and anybody from Zymergy in here? They love them.
No, we have church chairs at our church, so I know what
Okay.
you're talking about. Yeah. Okay.
So-
I was just wondering, I just thought that was an awful lot of money to, to put down on chairs when these really didn't look like they needed to be changed. So, okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the audience? I have no questions from online. Oh. And state your name and your rec card number after you sign in, please.
Okay. It's Bob Provian and 135477. And I spend time in lapidary silver and rockhounds. And as we come and go, my wife walks with a cane, and there are just so many people standing in the remaining parking lot trying to figure out how they're going to get up onto the pad. Was there any consideration ever given to a better transportation for some of these people during the pavement.
Very difficult decision. Yes, consideration was given. In the past, we've gone out to a local golf cart sales provider that has loaned us carts. Currently, we do not have the staff levels to provide drivers for those carts. So in this particular season, we made a decision that for the 3 weeks to 4 weeks that it was going to be down, that we would just ask everybody to park at the library. I know it's inconvenience, but it was a very difficult season for us staff-wise to be able to provide the extra transportation like we've done once before.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Well,
I know.
I just feel sorry for these poor people. And so, most of them still struggle.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Last call. Okay, thank you. And with that, I will adjourn the meeting, and we'll see you on the 19th to talk about our RR&Ps. Thanks.